Okay, so picture this. Richard Branson, July 2021, strapping into that Virgin Galactic space plane. Now, most of us saw, a billionaire off on an amazing adventure. But if you look closer, it was really, well, it was decades of manifestation kind of culminating right there. It wasn't just a rocket trip. It was an idea, right?
Really?
An idea born in the head of this kid, dyslexic, struggled with school, and somehow he imagined his way, literally, into orbit. And what's really wild is how we got there. It wasn't just business plans and spreadsheets. Our deep dive material suggests it was powered by these four invisible forces, forces that anyone apparently can learn to tap into.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to get into today. We're diving deep into these four. Imagination, willpower, audacity, and alignment. We're pulling out the key bits from our source, Richard Branson, Billionaire Manifestation Blueprint.
Hmm. The goal is to really understand the mindset, the moves he made, and maybe some of that magic behind one of the boldest lives out there. Okay, let's do it. Starting with imagination. The source really hammers this idea that Branson saw things before they existed. But how did he do that? I mean, how does someone listening move from just daydreaming to that level where it's so real you can almost like walk around in it? Does the source give any clues on that?
That's a great question because, yeah, it's definitely more than just wishful thinking. The book points out, all his big ventures, Virgin Records, signing bands nobody else touched, Virgin Atlantic with better service, Necker Island becoming this retreat. Each one started as this mental picture, super vivid, like he could almost walk around inside it, yeah? It was like radical prototyping, but purely in his mind. He'd sketch out how customers would feel, design airline cabins mentally, way before raising any money. So the lesson isn't that imagination is like soft stuff. No, it's the actual first phase of building your reality. His ideas looked impossible to most people,
Right.
right up until he'd already seen them as basically inevitable in his head.
That's really interesting, like mental prototyping, spotting problems or cool ideas before anything's even built. Is there a specific example in the source where that walk around in it thing really saved him time or money later on?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Virgin Atlantic again. He didn't just want an airline. He imagined the
Or
whole journey,
it's a
the
passenger didn't plan
experience,
it.
right? The food, the crew being genuinely friendly, the entertainment. Because he pictured it so clearly, he could spot the boring bits, the friction points, and also where he could add something special. He saw those opportunities for delight way before leasing a single plane. And that let him build a service that was different from day one, something that people actually wanted in a market that was, frankly, brutal.
Okay, so imagination gives you the destination, but wow, the journey there is often bumpy. And Branson definitely learned that when his vision for Virgin Atlantic almost crashed and burned right at the start. Which brings us to willpower. This is where it gets really intense. Virgin Atlantic nearly died in its first few years. You had competitors fighting dirty, engines failing, the money just drying up. Honestly, most people, myself included, would have probably just walked away. What does the source say about how he kept going? How did he sustain that willpower?
Yeah, you're right. The stakes were incredibly high. His response was huge. He sold Virgin Records, the thing that started it all, sold it to save the airline. The source has this line, it's powerful, cry if you must, but don't quit.
Mhm.
And it's not just about being tough or stubborn. It's this deep, deep belief in the bigger picture. It allowed him to see these awful setbacks as just plot points, speed bumps in a much longer story. For Branson, these near-death moments, they weren't failures to hide. They became the legends. They forged the brand. The source also mentions he was radically open with his teams about the problems, turned that shared struggle into collective grit. And you're right, this is where so many dreams just fizzle out. Not the idea stage, but in those storms that hit later.
Selling your core business, that's extreme willpower. But for most of us listening, the challenges aren't quite that big usually. So what's the everyday version of cry but don't quit? Does the source offer practical tips for those smaller but still draining challenges?
That's a good point. The material really talks about reframing things. For an everyday hurdle, it's about switching how you see it. It's not a wall, it's a puzzle, or maybe a test of how much you want it. The key takeaway seems to be detach from the immediate pain of the setback and plug back into the why, the purpose behind it all.
Hmm.
Branson apparently talked about finding the fun in overcoming obstacles, not like it was easy, but as a strategic way to keep energy up, keep creativity flowing. So the tactical bit is feel the frustration, sure, acknowledge it, but then immediately ask, okay, what's the next tiny brave step I can take, even a small one? That forward motion is apparently crucial. Keep moving.
Keep moving, right. That resilience built the foundation. But then to really punch through, Branson didn't just survive, he acted boldly, really boldly. Which brings us to Audacity. This is the stuff that often looks like pure craziness until it works spectacularly. So when the source talks about Branson's audacity, what does it really mean? Because let's be honest, sometimes being audacious just looks reckless. How does the source tell them apart?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. And the material's pretty clear. These stunts weren't just random acts of madness. Think about driving a tank through Times Square for Virgin Cola.
Right. Or the hot air balloon attempt.
Exactly. Or wearing a wedding dress for virgin brides. It seems totally nuts, right? But actually, they were incredibly calculated. They were basically low-cost, high-impact viral marketing before viral was even a common term. They were designed to slice through all the advertising noise and instantly tell you what Virgin was about.
Yeah.
Rebellious, fun, different.
Ah.
He was using surprise to get way more attention, way more PR value than he could ever afford to buy. So the source separates real audacity from recklessness by looking at the intent. Is it aligned with the brand? Does it have strategic purpose? Recklessness is just impulsive, maybe ego-driven. Audacity is bold, yes, often unconventional, but it's purposeful. It's designed for impact. It's like the bridge,
Yeah.
between that vision in your head and the actual world you can touch and influence. Without audacity, the source implies, imagination just stays a daydream.
That's a great way to put it. A bridge. Not just getting noticed, but actively pulling things towards you. Attention, chances, momentum. I hadn't quite framed it like that. Okay, and that leads us nicely to the final force, alignment, which you called the invisible engine. Branson does seem to have this specific kind of optimism. It's not naive, like you said, but sort of expectant. Like he just knows the right people, the right breaks are heading his way. How does the source connect that feeling, which sounds a bit woo-woo, to actual concrete strategy? Is it more than just thinking positive?
Right, it can sound a bit abstract, but the source links it directly to action and preparedness. Alignment, as described here, is about creating this proactive state. You're open, you're expectant, yes, but critically, your internal vision and your external actions are totally in sync. That synchronicity is what supposedly attracts the resources, the people, the opportunities you need. It's like tuning into the right frequency.
Tuning in.
Yeah, it's about building this sort of magnetic field around your goals. The source doesn't frame it as just passively wishing. It's about actively maintaining a clear, positive energy through things like gratitude, openness, maybe journaling like Branson did, which then helps you recognize and act on opportunities that match your vision when they appear. He also actively surrounded himself with people who got his vision, who resonated with that ambitious, slightly crazy outlet. So he was sort of curating his reality. It's really about being ready, fully prepared for the things you've imagined and willed into existence.
Being prepared for what you've imagined. I like that. But is there a risk there? Focusing too much on alignment and maybe becoming passive? Just waiting for the universe to deliver instead of going out and grabbing it?
That's a fair question, and the source actually addresses that quite directly. Alignment isn't passive waiting. Not at all. It's described more as proactive receptivity. Big phrase, but basically means you're out there and engaging with the world, but doing it from this place of clarity and positive expectation. This state actually makes you more likely to spot chances, to see openings that others might miss, precisely because your inner state matches your outer goals. So it's the difference between just sitting around hoping for a lucky break and being strategically poised to recognize and jump on one when it shows up. You ready for it?
Okay, I see. Proactive receptivity. So putting it all together, we have these four forces, right? You start with the spark, the imagination. Then you need the grit, the willpower to push through the tough times. Then the audacity to make those bold, game-changing moves. And finally, alignment, this underlying state that helps attract and recognize the right opportunities. It seems like Branson weaves these together into this sort of personal operating system. It's not a rigid plan, but a dynamic way he engages with reality.
Exactly. It's less a blueprint he follows step by step and more like a dynamic dance with reality. And that's why the source material isn't just telling his life story. It's really meant as a guide. It's trying to break down the mindset, those practical moves, and yeah, that bit of magic behind how he operates. And the really crucial takeaway for you listening is that this isn't some Branson superpower. He's not the only one who can imagine and will things into being and dare to act and align himself with his goals. You can too. Your own blueprint, whatever that looks like, it starts right here. And understanding this stuff is one thing, but applying it, that's where the value is.
Right. So the big question the source leaves us with is, if Branson built this huge empire using these forces, what reality could you build? Something to think about. How can you start crafting your own reality? Maybe starting today with just one bold thought, one small fearless step, or one aligned action.